Our lives rely on the production and consumption of goods, from food and basic needs to the conveniences people depend upon. However, the products people use every day impact the ecosystems around them, from pollution and land clearing to the waste left behind after their use, among other impacts. That's why we've invited experts on education, employment, and economies to discuss new strategies in the ways we all produce and consume can guide us all to a prosperous and thriving world for everyone. They are Professor Jayant Mahajan, a professor at Christ University, and Gregor Waltersdorfer, a consultant and auditor for Economy for the Common Good. After their presentations, they kindly took questions from the audience.
I must say that all these presentations explore very interesting points and appreciate how they all explore different aspects of production and consumption and strategies towards thrivability. To this end, I would like to thank our guest speakers for sharing their valuable knowledge and experience with us. After all, even the smallest action in our home, workplace, and community make our world more thrivable. Step by step, drop by drop, everything we do can make a difference for our planet and our future. Now, I would like to welcome everyone to the question and answer section of our webinar, where you will have the opportunity to ask questions to our speakers. They will answer them, and please post your questions in the Zoom chat, and I will also ask them to our speakers. So let's move to the question. For the first question, anyone can answer first. Most of us in the room will acknowledge the fact that our economic systems are often heavily reliant on consumption. Would it be possible to discuss, in your opinion, some of the biggest factors that drive consumption and share your example or experience of a successful initiative that has been decreased consumption? You may approach this by any area or the field.
Yeah, I think that's a really good observation that our current system really heavily relies on consumption. And because GDP just sums up everything that was produced or consumed. And so if we measure success, the success of our economy, what was consumed, we always need to consume more. And there are three sustainable development strategies that I always use in my lecture. It's efficiency, consistency, and sufficiency. So sufficiency means you only consume what you need. So it's limiting one's personal needs. That would decrease the consumption, by that also the damage. And consistency means you only consume things or goods or services that can flow in circles, like renewable energy, that are or products with renewable materials. So that's consuming without doing any harm. So, and I think, and then there's efficiency, that you get the most out of your consumption with the least input. So input output maximization, or no, output input maximization. And so we need all those three. So only consume as much that what you need. So no conspicuous consumption to impress people you don't like anyway, and consuming without doing harm in an efficient way. And what was the second part of the question? If I know any initiatives?
Yes. If you can share any example or like successful initiative that has decreased consumption.
Yeah, I can only say the obvious. I only know some obvious examples like car sharing that also the professor already mentioned.
And Professor Jayant Mahajan, if you can share your thoughts on that.
So, yes, while this is right that our economy depends on consumption, and of course, there are countries like Bhutan where it is not pursued that way. One of the reasons our economies depend on consumptions is because our economic indicators, which I presented in one of my slides, GDP, per capita income, and so on and so forth, So we measure our success with these indicators, which are based on consumption. So the only way is we uh, change the way we look at progress. So one of the examples is Bhutan, of course, where they measure their progress with GHI as an indicator and not GDP. So GHI is gross happiness index, how happy people are, not how much they are consuming, right? So that's of course at a national level. So we have to look at our indicators. So there are small success stories which do inspire us and from which we can learn from. Or the second is the entire consumption pattern, like the example which I shared in Bakri Chap, where in this small village in Uttarakhand, where the tourist business was more of consumer driven. Consumer wants this, consumer wants that. So uh, instead of looking at that, Rupesh, my friend, he had a complete new model where you start respecting the local thing, and then that becomes your product, which is sustainable. So there are small success stories. It's just the matter of scaling up.
Thank you. Thank you both of you for sharing your thoughts on that. Now, so I have a question for Professor Jayant Mahajan right now. The question is, before your change before climate change cycling journey, how did you view our climate and how did your view change?
So, just getting the question right. So, before I took up this journey of change before climate change, how did I change? So, see, this was about a year and a half long journey. And typically, for a journey like this, you would pack a lot of things. So, I decided to take this journey on a bicycle with almost uh, maybe 1% of the belongings that I would normally otherwise travel with. So I had like two pairs of trousers, few t-shirts, and some, of course, some camera and something to eat and some water bottles. So and of course a sleeping bag. So I really minimized my entire travel. During the travel, I did not. In fact, I trained myself not to crave for the mineral water bottle even if you're thirsty. I had my bottles, plastic bottles, which I kept reusing throughout the journey. And I did not rely on the typical consumeristic attitude, of going and just buying a water bottle on. So these are a few things. So I first started living the minimalistic life. I did not approach places as a consumeristic tourist, but I approached it more as an explorer with a very minimalistic mindset. I did not stay in hotels. I would stay in regular accommodations. So these are a few things which I did myself. Even now in my plastic, in my regular life, I'm very conscious about the resources, the energy I consume, the plastic I use, and so on and so forth. So yeah, that's what I did.
Thank you for sharing your thought on that. So, I have next question for Gregor Waltersdorfer. So the question is, what inspired you to start economy for the common good?
It was the financial crisis that occurred really during my studies, and it opened my eyes. Um, and I realized, um, oh my God, in what economy will I integrate myself in a few years when I finished my studies? It's completely unsustainable economy, and it was not. I wasn't haven't been taught that in school, and so I really dived into monetary theory and alternative economics, and that's actually also one driver of our of the consumption that our economy needs. It's the money, because money is created by credit, and credit needs to get paid back with interest. So we always need to have more money if we don't want to make any losses or redistribution. So that's another driver, and that's also seen in the on the company macro level, micro level, that the economy for the common good wants to tackle by that companies have more equity and less loans, that they are less forced to grow. And so these my research and during my studies and also the many documentaries that I watched, they that was a learning path, and I looked for different avenues how I can make most profit, most impact in my professional life. And so I came across the economy for the common good, and I think it's a really hands-on approach where we don't need to wait for anyone. So if we want to reform our monetary system, I would need to have become central banker, which is impossible as an engineer with 25 years at that time. But the economy for the common good is bottom up, is a bottom up movement, and we only need to work towards the critical mass that I mentioned. And it's really and it's really supportive because you're not alone. It's most companies that do sustainability reporting, they are alone. They are not joining a network where they get mutual support. But so if one consultant in the economy for the common good um, has a new client, it also helps you to in convincing other companies because they may know the new member, and then okay, he is now in the movement, and I was surprised that there are so many companies that are really fed up with the current system, and they are saying, okay, we already live the principles of the economy for the common good, and now we want to show that. So they found their niche, the niche in the market um, where they don't need to, because they are small, they don't need to compete to be the cheapest and be part of the red ocean and say, okay, we want to support this idea, even though most of the incentives like the radical VAT tax reform, they are not yet in place, but they so that's really empowering to have this bottom-up movement, meet other company businesses and people that are like-minded.
Thank you, Gregor, for answering that question. And the next question is from Saeed. He's from Australia, and the question is for Gregor. The question is, how do you think we could increase public awareness for the goal you correctly said? This awareness enables citizens to ask from politicians or governments to follow the sustainable indicators for their policies.
Okay, thank you, Said, for this excellent question about raising awareness. Yeah, I think there are different ways, and um, the economy for the common good already tries to cater a few of them. For instance, there's education, so that volunteers in the movement, they go to schools and run a 1 or 2 hours workshop and tell pupils what I have only discovered later as a student at the university. Or so it depends in what area you are active, or if you are in local politics, you can talk to your mayor, or if you're an IT specialist, you can develop an online game like the simulation, but there are also other online games. Just yesterday, I discovered a board game called Moneymaker, which is now on crowdfunding, and it's offline. It's a board game, so it can't reach so many people. But if there would be an online version, that already also change things. Or if you're into communication, then you can try to make a viral YouTube video. Or be active on TikTok, which currently reaches most people, or develop an common good AI. So there are so many things that all need to go hand in hand to reach as many people as possible.
Thank you, Gregor, for answering that. Our next question is for Professor Jayant. The question is, if a professional cannot stop climate changes, as you say in your slides, who can and how?
So when I say professional cannot, is one single professional or a one single profession cannot. It's we all collectively have to work towards it. And so when I showed you that slide on sustainable development goals, each professional, sorry, uh, so uh, each professional will align their professions to solving a specific issue related to a specific goal. But just me focusing on a certain sustainable development goal will not help the cause of climate change. So we all have to have collective, cohesive efforts together, and only that will help to solve this problem of climate change. So it's all of us basically. We are in the same boat, and we all have to work towards it. I hope I have answered the question.
Yes, thank you for answering that. Our next question is for Gregor. And the question is, you can discuss some of the reasons why you think effort to keep global average temperature rising over 1.5 degrees have failed.
The reasons why you think the efforts of keeping below 1.5 degrees Celsius failed. So we already passed the goal in 1 year. That was 2024. We were above 1.5 degrees, and now um, negative feedback loops kick in. And I don't see global efforts to reduce the CO2 emissions enough to to quickly go below the 1.5 degrees Celsius goal. So one negative feedback loop are the oceans. So they already took up so much carbon, and the more carbon they take up, the less new carbon they can absorb. So that was a big buffer. And now they are in some areas they are already saturated. And so that's one negative feedback loop where we lose one carbon sink. And so now more carbon stays in the atmosphere. And that's why we will hit up again. That's an additional feedback loop by I think 0.2 degrees Celsius increase by the end of the century, only because of the ocean. Then is the Amazonian basin, which is mainly a negative feedback loop because of deforestation. And so it's not so dependent on increasing temperature, but deforestation. So the more we cut down trees in that areas, the less the rainforest is capable of producing its own rain. And then the region becomes more dry, and we already see it at the Rio Negro in the last few years. How the water level of the river, of the second largest river that flows into the Amazon, how it decreased. And so with evaporation, usually the rainforests produce their own rain. So, but the smaller the forest area is, the less water can evaporate, and by that less clouds are formed and less rain. And so then they dry out, those areas dry out, and we see uh, also a smaller carbon sink in that area. And then that's why we have less carbon stored in biomass and more carbon in the atmosphere.
Thank you. Thank you for answering that. Our next question is for Professor Jayant, and the question is, why do you think economic growth indicator fail to focus on nature?
See, it was very convenient because we all want shortcuts, you know. In fact, if you look at the old system of economy, which the tribals followed, or the ancient civilization in Asia followed, nature was always Mother Nature. And when we started post industrialization, the economy treated nature as a resource which has to be exploited. And then you make wealth, and we represent our wealth in terms of currency. So nature is not in its original form, is not wealth anymore. So what we are chasing is a means. So we look at money as a means, or as an end in itself. Earning money is end in itself, whereas we should look at it as a means to an end. So that whole attitude shift, post-industrialization, has what's caused this problem, and we need to get back to it. That's exactly what I've spoken into in my LinkedIn article, which I pasted a link. If the nature is not on the balance sheet, economic growth is a lie. Yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Thank you so much for answering that. Uh, the next question is for Gregor, and the question is, why do you think the large business cannot survive the catering to customer need alone?
That's my assumption, because they operate in the red ocean because they are so large, they are attacked by all directions from competitors, and they have such high stakes with lots of employees and a lot of debt and shareholder interest if they're publicly listed, that you really need to switch to survival mode. I talked to CEOs of large companies in Luxembourg regarding the green transition, and they say, all good as long as we can pay our salaries. So that were construction companies, that were consulting companies. So as long they always need to generate turnover, build more for the construction companies, consult more just to pay all the salaries. So that was their main concern. It was not the green transition, new rules, how the economy should operate. It was only earning money to pay salaries.
Thank you for answering, Gregor, that question. The next question is for our next speaker, Professor Jayant. The question is, you discussed rapid urbanization and massive amount of construction and waste in Pune. Why, in your opinion, is there so much of a focus on increasing growth rather than sustainability?
See, again, as I said, it is how we have defined growth and how we define success. For me, success is I have to own a car, I have to own a house. House becomes my asset. So if it comes at a destruction of the tree, with the destruction of soil, I'm okay with it, because the tree standing as it is, or the soil in its purest form, doesn't give me money. If I can sell a tree and make money, but I can sell a house and make money. Tree doesn't give me appreciation. House gives me appreciation. So the moment our definition of assets changed pre-industrialization, obviously people started chasing the illusory wealth like houses, currency, and all the other material things. So uh, there's a rampant construction. I'll give you an example. So while I was cycling through this coastal region of Maharashtra, okay, it's a very beautiful forest with a lot of mountains. What I witnessed was they're blowing up the mountain tops, flattening the surface, and constructing high-rise buildings on those mountains. Now, why? Because people in the cities, they want to come and stay in the in the forest, in the on the hills for better air, because they have already gone there and spoiled all the air. Now, but then they would come there and stay there for like what, once in a year for a week or so. For that, they're blowing up the entire mountain. As a result, what's happening? The mountain is blown up. All the soil which gets blown up in the process, it gets washed in the sea. The seabed level rises. As a result, the aquatic life suffers. The fishes die. As a result, the communities which have been living there for centuries, they suffer because they have no fish. Their life depends on it, and so on and so forth. The cycle gets destroyed. It's all because I treat house as an asset. But then, if I treat it just like a necessity and not an asset, not a wealth, obviously your entire focus changes. So it's the question of the problem is the way we define development, the way we define success, the way we define wealth. These are the issues. So if we mature our definitions and make it more inclusive, that will help, and that will only be a solution to this problem.
Professor Jayant. So, I would like to thank everyone for answering so far. There are some very important points. However, we only have time for one more question. So now I would like to ask uh, Speaker Gregor. The question is: you discussed a link between the capabilities of public authorities and the capabilities of businesses. How can how can public authorities influence business to contribute to the common good, and are there any examples of it?
Yeah, with public authorities, I need to distinguish between municipalities that here in Europe they run industrial zones and then also as a public authority the state. So at the local level, um, how municipalities can influence businesses, it's there are through taxes. They In Europe there are communal taxes which are not high, but that's a level. Then through public procurement, so they also municipalities, they also construct buildings. In Europe they organize the schools, and by that they also feed the children at noon, and so they can choose what to feed them, what to provide them, what kind of food, organic or conventional. So they have some buying power. And then also the previously mentioned construction zones. So companies, especially big companies, they they need land. And then the question is, in which municipalities do they get the land? And when I follow the political discussions in Germany, Austria, and Luxembourg, there are many municipalities that refuse big companies to build their premises in their area because of negative environmental impacts. Like, for instance, dairies because of the high water consumption. They were for cleaning. They were refused in Luxembourg. Also, data centers were refused in Germany and Luxembourg. So there are lots of important discussions on local level, and in what world do we want to live in? And I think these are really, really important conversations and decisions that we really need to take carefully and take them in a democratic way. If we don't preserve democracy, we can't make a just green transition. So at the moment, in Europe, we got a new battleground that we need to target. So we need to get one step back and preserve our democratic basis so that we can then restart the green transition.
Thank you for answering that, Gregor. We can take one more question, and the next question is for Professor Jayant. And the question is, if you can tell everyone one thing to inspire positive change, what would it be and why?
So keep this motto in your mind: change before climate change. I have to change myself before the climate changes for worst. And what change should I bring in myself is those 5 R's. First, the most important is refuse. Second is repurpose. Then reduce, recycle, and reuse. So if we manage to do this in our daily lives consciously and encourage others to do this and inspire them to do it from my own actions, not preach and not practice, I think that will go a long way.
So, I would like to thank you all for your insightful answers. However, we are running short on time, and we are unable to ask you any further questions. But I would like to ask our speakers to answer the remaining questions offline. They can be sent to you soon, and for our viewers, please sign up for the newsletter and to get access to our Q&A and the latest updates. Also, please register for upcoming Thrivability webinar on Tuesday, March 17, 2026. We have posted the registration link in the chat, but you can also find it by going to our website, thrivabilitymatters.online. Thank you so much